Do we know those that are just watching on the live stream that aren't participating? Is it just going to work for them? Is there a new link being generated? How does the live stream work? Anybody? Maybe Ben's cat knows.
Did we have people for the hearing?
Well, unless Tasha, Tasha may be aware of somebody. I had some email feedback from somebody. I asked them if they wanted to participate, encourage them to participate. I don't know if they're going to or followed up with Tasha for the access credentials or not.
Got it.
Hello?
Hey, Tasha.
Hi. Were you talking to, I couldn't hear you. My laptop doesn't have audio or but I was on the phone with Jamie and I could hear you talking to me through Jamie's phone because he was logged on.
I was just trying to figure out, for those that are just observer only watching on live stream, is that link going to work now for them? Or
Yes, Jamie was checking it. Jamie checked it while we were on. Live stream is working. The only thing is, well, only one person called in for the number. Yep. So that person won't have this phone number, but they will, if they go onto the live stream, they will see it live streaming. And I can keep checking my email to see if anybody's
put it up. Okay. All right.
Yeah. So, and I sent the new link to everybody that got the packet and all of the information on Friday. So all of our guests should now have it. We're not sure what.
You had someone for the public hearing, is what you're saying?
I had one person call. It was from Mike Taylor's attorney's office. Is that his name? Taylor. Yep. And I gave them the telephone number. The person from his office that called said he was going to be watching the live link, but just in case they wanted to call in, I did give her the number, but it would have been the number to the link that just didn't work just now. So if they're watching, we can say when we start recording, when we're going live, we can give the new number and they can call in. But I didn't.
We don't see Charlie Osberger. I don't see Peter.
They would have had to check their email. I sent the link to everybody that I sent all of the information out to on Friday. I can send it to them separately.
I'm sending Peter a text, but can somebody call Charlie?
It looks like David's having some audio problems. Can you hear us, David, or no?
Oh.
He can hear you, but we can't hear you. Yeah. Yeah.
His says not connected to audio. It's not through us. He has the little X.
Yep. Can you hear David? Sign out and sign in again.
There's Peter. There's Heather. There's Charlie. Mm-hmm. I'll check my email and voicemail to see if.
Are we being recorded yet?
No, I don't think so. But now we are.
Let me see.
Good
Oh,
evening, everybody. This is the Mansfield Town Council meeting of April 26th. It's 7:15. We have started late because we've been having some difficulties with our GOAT meeting. And I'm not sure whether we're quite ready to begin. So if you would just, members of the public, would just hold on for a minute while we get everything clarified and set up. Okay, is everybody ready yet? Okay, if you could mute yourself if you're not speaking, that would always help.
Tony, I'm not sure we have Ryan yet, or his video's off. I'm not sure he's ready.
Brian, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, good. All right, I am going to call this meeting formally to order. Ms. King, would you please call the roll?
Yes, Osberger.
Here.
Berthelot.
Here.
Bruder.
Here.
Bertoni. I don't see him. Are we expecting him this evening?
I don't know.
Okay. Freudman.
Here.
Katzenberger.
Here.
Moran.
Here.
Sharon.
Here.
Shaken.
Here.
Thank you.
I have a cat who is wandering around the house meowing, so she won't jump up in front of us, but if you hear noise in the background, I must apologize. Okay, the next thing on our agenda is a public hearing on the Four Corners Sanitary Sewer Project assessments. Ms. Chain, would you read the call for the public hearing, please?
Yes, the Mansfield Town Council will meet virtually via GoToMeeting and hold a virtual public hearing at 7 p.m. on April 26, 2021 to solicit public comment regarding the proposed assessments of the properties in the Four Corners Sanitary Sewer Project. Information regarding the proposed assessments is on file at the Town Clerk's Office, 4 South Eagleville Road, Mansfield, and is posted on the town's website, mansfieldct.gov, dated at Mansfield, Connecticut, this 14th day of April 2021.
Thank you. Mr. Aylesworth, do we have anybody who has signed up to speak?
Not that I'm aware of. I did have some email back and forth with a resident. They posed some questions, sort of directed generally to myself or John and DPW, and we are in the process of answering those questions. I suggested to that individual that he might want to participate and told him where how he could get in touch with Tasha to do that, but I don't believe he has. So I could read into the record the questions that he posed to us, whatever your pleasure.
Before you do that, is there anything that you or Mr. Carrington or Mr. Delay would like to say before the hearing begins?
John, would you like to share your slides now? Okay, I'm going to give John.
Yes.
Make John a presenter 1 second.
Okay, good evening, everyone. And Mayor, I'm not sure if it's a technicality or not, but this technically is WPCA public hearing, so I don't know if you have to convene as the Water Pollution Control Authority.
Tony, you're muted.
It would probably be a good idea. Is there a motion to convene as the Water Pollution Control Authority? Mr. Shaken. Seconded by Mr. Bruder. Any discussion? All those in favor of convening say aye, please.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Adopted unanimously. Okay, we are now the Water Pollution Control Authority. Mr. Carrington, thank you for that. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to give a short presentation. Some of this is repetitive from briefings for the last 7 years and most recently October 26, 2020. But this is the Four Corners Sanitary Sewer System. It's a project that the town has been developing for many years. It was in the works before I came to the town in February of 2014. These were the goals. This is the project area. All the properties being assessed are only the properties in the project area, the ones that are in the shaded lighter brown color. There may be other projects along the sewer line adjacent to it, but they are not included in the project, never were from, again, before I even got here in 2014. So it's just these properties that are being assessed that we're talking about this evening. So the project area just involves 2 pump stations, a smaller one called the Willards Pump Station and one on Rolling Hills, and we send all the waste up to the plant at Yukon. And this has all been installed. I'm hearing somebody else in the background.
There we go. Yeah, David got it.
Before the referendum back in 2014, the goal was, we assumed a $9 million project. 1/3 would be paid for by the state through a $3 million grant. The other 1/3 each would be paid by the property owners through assessments and the Mansfield taxpayers. And this slide was from August 22nd, 2014 public hearing conducted on the project before the referendum. We're talking about assessments tonight. So our ordinance, Chapter 159, governs how assessments are levied. Assessments are different for each property and are dependent on use, size, and shape. So it's very rare to get 2 properties assessed exactly the same amount. Assessments are calculated upon completion of the construction, which we are now complete, and property owner notification is required. We did send a letter out from the town manager, and a public hearing is being held right now. The total construction cost of the project was just a little under $8.4 million. We take out the $3 million from the state. That left us with $5.392 million. There was also bonding for 20 years. The cost of that and the interest over 20 years is a little over $2 million. So the total assessable cost is a little over $7.4 million. The breakdown of that, that's going to be split equally between all taxpayers and property owners in the Four Corners sewer project area, as you decided as the WPCA on October 26, 2020. So half of that, $3.717,321.60 million, is the amount taxpayers will pay, and an equal amount is assessed over the property owners to be paid over 18 years. The method for sewer assessment is property assessments will include proportionate share of the total cost. If a property is redeveloped, we reassess. It's allowed through a Connecticut general statute. Again, each property is different and estimated individually, and property assessment is apportioned to properties as follows: half based on front footage or adjusted front footage, and half based on the number of units. So walking through that, looking at the half via front footage from our charter 159-19, adjusted front footage is the frontage of odd-shaped lots to an average frontage that would be the equivalent to the frontage of a rectangularly shaped lot of the same area and depth as determined by myself and my staff. So for the entire project area, taking that into consideration, so if somebody has a odd-shaped lot, we have to kind of make it a rectangle. The total front footage of the project is 19,999 feet. And this number won't change with just these properties we have now. If there's others added to the sewer district, then that could change and we could reassess. But right now, that should not change. So half the assessment is, again, $1.858660 million. That divided by 19 28,999 feet comes out to $92.93, a little above that, a little less than 0.94 cents, but numbers matter here when you're talking. So we took it out to 4 decimal points. So anybody who's assessed, if you have 1 linear foot of adjusted front footage, you're going to pay $92.93.77. And this is just a picture you've seen before. So the adjusted front footage, this lot here, if you see the top of the picture, the rectangle isn't exactly a rectangle. So the adjusted front footage would be the average between those two. And the other half of the assessment is based on the total number of units. The total number of current units in the project area is 660 3/4. This number will change with any development. Again, half the assessment of 3.7 million is 1.858. Divide that by the current 660.75 units, and you come up with 2,813 per unit. Again, this will decrease if and when units are added. So if somebody builds a complex that has, 200 units, we now have 859, or depending on how many are currently counted for that property, we take that away. But we add the 220, there may have been a count already there. We recalculate the number and it'll drop from 2,800 to whatever that number will be. So that we expect to change during the lifetime of these assessments. And there's a picture we've seen since 2014. So just in this example, you take the 2,400 square feet, divide by the 1,500 square feet for a commercial unit, you get 16 units for commercial. And for residential, it's based on acreage size and the frontage. And in this case, we have 6 acres, you get 2 acres per unit. So this property would be assessed for 3 units. So to give an example, I took 2 of the assessments that we sent out. One is 520 Middle Turnpike that has adjusted front footage assessment based on it's a trapezoidal shaped lot. So its adjusted front footage is 179.15 feet, where its actual footage along the pipe is less than that, but it's because the back of the lot is wider than the front of the lot. That's why the adjustment. So using that 179.15 feet times the $92.9377 per foot, we get an approximate 16,650 just for their adjusted front footage assessment. The unit assessment for that property, since it's a single family residential house, is 1 unit. As we discussed just a few minutes ago, 1 unit is $2,813 per unit. So you add those 2 together, and the total assessment today for 520 Middle Turnpike is approximately $19,463. Again, as units get built, the 2813 portion of that will decrease, but the 16,650, we don't expect any change in adjusted front footage. And then looking at a commercial property, I picked 34 Professional Park Road. Again, it's a trapezoidal shaped lot, so it's adjusted front footage is 227.65 feet. Again, that's $92.9377 per foot. You multiply that out and you get 21,157. Unit assessment, you take the square footage, divide by the 1,500 square feet per unit, and that comes to 13.75 units. You multiply that by the 2813 per unit, and that comes up with an assessment just for unit as 38,679. You add the 2 together, and the total assessment for 34 Professional Park Road is $59,836. And again, the process for the assessment, WPCA adopts proposed assessments. You did that at the last council meeting. You hold a public hearing, which we're doing tonight, and I'm going to recommend that you keep it open. Before we had the technical difficulties, I was going to recommend that, but now with the technical difficulties, I think we should keep the public hearing open until the next meeting, just because this is a new process for the town and for the residents. After the public hearing is closed, the WPCA will determine final assessments to property owners. Upon approval of the assessments, it's recorded with the town clerk. It's then published in the newspaper, and then residents that are being assessed can appeal within 21 days of the filing with the town clerk, and they must appeal to the Superior Court for the Judicial District of Talon County. And that's all I have. Is there any questions?
Do council members have any questions of Mr. Carrington? All right. Mr. Aylesworth, would you read the questions that you received of Mr. Hatchenberger?
Yes, I think, well, many people probably wouldn't mind. I don't think we should read the questions into the record unless we had the consent of the person writing in. I mean, if they sent an email to the town, that is normally included in the packet. But if someone just called up and then we responded, which is perfectly fine. Absent that, I don't think we should try to summarize or put people's names into the record if they haven't, told us to do so, or they haven't sent it in a way that's clear.
Mr. Aylesworth, did you have any sense whether these questions that came to you were formal parts of the hearing or were just inquiries to the town?
I would characterize them as inquiries to the town. It's just related directly to the subject matter, the topic at hand. There was nothing in any of the emails from the sender that referenced the upcoming hearing, said these are the questions they want to have answered at the hearing. So it was just, in the interest, I guess, of being transparent, in the off chance that they wanted these questions raised during the hearing, but I understand the points that Mr. Kotchenberger is making. For what it's worth, I think, and if I can pull them back up, the questions, they're not of a sort of identifying nature. So I don't know, it's not going to tie it back to the individual. So I don't know if that changes the calculus at all. But
I wouldn't think it would. I mean, if it's just general, I think that's fine. I'm sorry, Tony.
I think this is a public hearing for an opportunity for members of the public to appear. And if we have no comment, no personal request, either in writing or in person to ask the questions, I think that my judgment would be that we don't enter them into the record at this time. However, I agree that we should keep the record open. Normally, at the end of when people stop talking during the public hearing, I rule the public hearing has been closed. I will not do that this time. We will continue the public hearing until our next council meeting. So on the agenda for the next council meeting, there should be a continuation of this public hearing. And if people wish to make presentations at that time, they may. We also will take written communications for presentation at a public hearing or inclusion in the record. And email communications are also welcome for that purpose. Is there anything else we should do about this hearing before we move on? Nope. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And I'm sort of. These are obviously expensive propositions, but we were really glad to get the sewer project done, and this is a necessary part. So, is there anybody from the public who wishes to address the council on any other topic?
Excuse me, May.
Yeah,
I'm
all
sorry.
right. Wait a minute. We need to go turn back into the council. Is there
Thank
a
you.
motion to return to being the town council?
Moved.
Bacon moves, Mr. Kotchenberger seconds. Is there anybody who is opposed to returning to the town council? Anybody who wishes to abstain? All right. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, now, as the town council, is there anybody from the public who wishes to address us on any issue, Mr. Aylesworth?
I didn't get advance notice of it, but I do see a Heather Evans on the screen, so I think maybe she'd reached out to Tasha.
Ms. Evans, are you still there?
Hi, this is Tasha. Miss Evans is on for the Human Rights Commission agenda item. She is the representative for the Human Rights Commission.
Good. Okay. Thank you. We'll get to her at that point.
I do not believe there are any public comments, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. We'll close the opportunity for the public to address the council. Report of the town manager. Mr. Aylesworth, you have a very long and detailed report, which is full of wonderful information. And I do hope that members of the public will read it because it's extremely important. But can you summarize in some way?
I will try to as best I can. So I'm happy to announce, as the council was made aware back in the early portion of this month, we had an opportunity to submit requests for federal funding in the form of earmarks through Congressman Courtney's office. Those funding requests were to be basically put in one of two buckets, one from the Appropriations Committee and one for transportation infrastructure, basically the next transportation bill. And so the town submitted two project requests, and we are still awaiting word on one. That would be the intersection improvements or redesign, the intersection of Storrs Road and Warrenville Road, or State Route 195 and 89. And we're supposed to hear back to know the disposition of that, at least as far as the Congressman's office review is concerned. But I am happy to report that we received a green light from the Congressman's office relative to the new sidewalks that we proposed would go from the Four Corners down towards, I'm sorry, is it Towers Road? Is that the correct name?
Tower Road?
Yeah, basically across from Horse Barn Hill Road, the one piece of it. So I want to stress that this does not mean that we are receiving the funding. What this means is that, you know, we are in select company with a small group of other projects being advanced by Congressman Courtney's office. So from the district, we've been selected, and then obviously it'll move on now to be part of a, I guess, a national conversation, if you will. But there were a very large number of requests, and so the fact that we made the cut for the recommendations moving forward from Congressman Courtney's office is no small feat. So just as I thanked staff, both our DPW staff as well as planning and development staff, Linda Painter, Derek DeLay, and John, I want to make sure I do so again, because this couldn't have happened without their due diligence and hard work on this. And you know, we'll see where it goes from here. But that's a $2.8 million project, and it's an 80-20 split. And so if it ultimately, you know, is selected in the final assessment at the federal level, that would be $2.24 million in federal funds for new sidewalks along 195, which would have tremendous public safety implications, we believe, because that is an artery frequented by pedestrians that are walking from the Four Corners down towards Yukon. And frankly, they're doing so in a not very safe manner right now. And so this would be a big deal if it comes to fruition. So we're excited about that, and I'll certainly keep the council, briefed on the situation as it moves forward, both with this project as well as the one we're still waiting to hear back from, the intersection redesign project. Happy to report that the first day of our new fire chief is rapidly approaching. It's a couple weeks away still, but it is rapidly approaching. May 10th, Chief Fred Mitchell, chief currently of the Georgetown Fire Department in Georgetown, Mass. It'll be his official first day. Myself and Holly Schaefer, our HR director, are working on basically a first day program, if you will, with the new fire chief. As you can appreciate, over the course of the first day and the first week, there are a large number of stakeholders, internal and external to the town, that Fred will need to meet with. But fortunately, May 10th also happens to coincide with the next regular business meeting of the town council. So we're going to have Fred, Chief Mitchell, introduce himself. I'll introduce him to you all at that evening's meeting, and we'll get this his official tenure started off the right way. So looking forward to that. I actually had a coffee meeting with Fred today. He's really hitting the ground running. He's already met with a number of members of the department, as well as mutual aid departments, and he's getting up to speed on the fire study and other, basically key decision points that are facing the town. So he's definitely embracing the role with gusto. I think that's fantastic. I wanted to provide an update on the Martin Luther King mural project. I'm very happy to report that our Human Rights Commission, or a subgroup might be better stated, of our Human Rights Commission, has stepped forward to basically take an active leading role on this and basically serve as the catalyst, as it were, for the project. They're looking to partner with Core Mansfield, the NAACP, Wyndham Willimantic Branch, and the Mansfield Arts Advisory Committee. So a pretty well-rounded group on this project. And I believe it's this coming Thursday, we'll have a follow-up call with the executive director of the Rise Up group, talk about next steps. The most important next step, as I understand it, is site selection, because a lot of the outreach and fundraising around the project will be tied to a site once a site is identified. And so those deliberations and recommendations are forthcoming. But stay tuned. The goal is to have a groundbreaking, so to speak, or maybe groundbreaking is not the right word, a brush wedding. Maybe that's the right term. On June, what's that?
The can opening.
Can opening. So have the project officially kick off Juneteenth. And even if that doesn't necessarily mean that the mural is started, but at least the outreach and communications piece of it, no later than Juneteenth, with a final production, completed mural and an unveiling to tie in with Indigenous Peoples Day in October of 2021. So, kind of two really important bookends, civil rights dates, and I think it's an ambitious calendar, ambitious timeline, but we should be able to achieve that. So looking forward to providing future updates as that project moves forward. The Human Services, Youth Services, and Recycling and Trash Services departments are partnering with Mansfield Public Schools for 2 pop-up spring resource fairs. The first one was actually today. That was from 3 to 4:30 at Helenco Estates. And there's another one coming up at Sunny Acres Park on May 5th from 2 to 3:30. In addition to information about all the services available to families, such as Helping Hands, food assistance, camperships, and upcoming events, the fairs will offer snacks, giveaways, and a drawing for free refurbished bicycles and helmets. So we really hope that families in our community will avail themselves of these resource fairs, or at least the second resource fair if they didn't have a chance to get to the first one today. And I myself plan to attend the second one. I heard it was quite windy today, but I think we had pretty good turnout. Relative to the new elementary school project, sealed bids for the project, the construction project, were open on April 13th. I believe we received 7 bids, although the 7th was sort of disqualified because it wasn't submitted through the proper electronic portal. They were actually the highest bid overall anyway. So really 6 qualified bids, if you will, or approved bids. 4 of the remaining 6 were within the budget ceiling that the project manager and architecture firm have identified as basically the ceiling budget. The low bid was submitted by Newfield Construction, came in at $36.4 million. It was actually kind of remarkable because there were 3 bids separated by just a few $100,000. So to have as many variables in this project as there were and have 3 bids come in that close, and talking with our owner's project rep, Collier's project managers, that's highly, highly unusual, as you would expect, given that much variability, the number of assumptions that bidders have to make. So we're hoping to move forward. The school building committee is hoping to move forward with Newfield. There's been a scope review completed. Newfield has a good reputation. TSKP Studio, who is the architect on the project, they've worked with Newfield on other school building projects with favorable results. So for all those reasons, again, they are the low bid. The town would do well to work with them. However, I do need to point out that there's currently a bid protest that was filed with the State Department of Administrative Services. I'd invite Attorney Deneen to offer any commentary he has on this in a moment. Basically, the second low bid is contesting that there was a material defect essentially with the bid submitted by Newfield Construction, and is trying to have this courts change the outcome so that they become the new low bid. I'll let Kevin, if he's still on, yeah, there he is, briefly speak to what the next steps look like.
Thank you, Ryan. There's an expedited process through the Department of Administrative Services. We have to file our response by next Monday. There's some questions. I really don't want to get into the details in the public section on this, but whether it was properly filed with Department of Administrative Services versus elsewhere. So we're filing our responses to that. We're pretty confident in our position that it's going to be the award is going to be upheld, and our main goal is to get through this as efficiently and quickly as possible so that it doesn't impact the timelines for the construction side of things.
Thank you, Kevin. Let's see. Oh, and on the topic of the new school, I did want to also make sure everybody was aware that this Thursday we're hosting a virtual information session on the new school. It's going to be in the evening, starting at 6:30. It'll be live streamed and recorded for people to watch in the future. But basically, it'll be a full update on the project, intended for members of the community that aren't that familiar with what's going on to become more familiar, and get people excited as we transition to the design phase. So I'll be joining Superintendent Kelly Lyman and a few other folks on that evening's program. Transitioning to planning and development, a few updates on the Helping Hand program. With summer approaching, we know that many families are looking to summer camps to provide childcare for school-age children. The Helping Hand program can assist families impacted by COVID-19 with registration costs for summer camps licensed by the state of Connecticut as a child care provider, as well as those who are exempt from licensing. To determine whether a summer camp is eligible, we would hope that people would visit 211childcare.org. Families interested in applying for assistance are encouraged to contact the Department of Planning and Development at 860-429-3330 or email helpinghand@mansfieldct.org. When it comes to housing rehabilitation, we have a housing rehabilitation program that provides assistance with home repairs and improvements to low and moderate income households. The town provides a 0% interest loan of up to $35,000 with no monthly payments. The loan is repaid upon sale or refinancing. The town will prepare a scope of work for the project, obtain construction bids, and manage the construction process and contractor payments. A few notes for Human Services. Beginning Monday, May 3rd, the Senior Center will begin a phased-in reopening. It's going to start with offering several small in-person groups, one-to-one services, and some fitness classes throughout the week, following all the state guidelines regarding COVID safety. Reservations and pre-registration, as well as masks and social distancing, are required, and the center will look a bit different, but they're excited to begin welcoming the public back into the building. Throughout the month of May, the center will also continue offering some popular online programs to ensure that those who cannot attend in person for whatever reason are still able to stay connected. All the details regarding the center's reopening and their programming can be found in their newsletter, Senior Sparks, which is on their webpage at www.mansfieldct.gov/seniors. Anyone with questions should feel free to contact the center. Give them a call at 429-0262. When it comes to Parks and Recreation is heavily engaged in managing spring programs and preparations for a number of summer camps, programs, and other summer services. Please reach out to the community center if you have any interest in registering yourself or a youth for any of the programs. We're pleased to announce that Mansfield Public Library is expanding its hours as of Monday, May 3rd. Library hours will be Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday, 9:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. for walk-in service. Tuesday and Thursday, 1:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. for walk-in service. The town clerk and assistant town clerks attended the annual Connecticut Town Clerks Association Spring Conference this past week, which unfortunately coincided with spring break, which was not very ideal for those that have children, but they made it work. They made the sacrifice. Over the course of the 3-day conference, they received critical updates from the State Elections and Enforcement Commission, Department of Public Health, Secretary of State's Office, and Connecticut Public Library, and reviewed select legal duties of town clerks as they pertain to these state entities. Some notable changes with larger implications on the daily office operations include the September 2021 launch of the state's new electronic death registry system, EDRS, and a new electronic trade name registry system for statewide use. It's been pretty quiet on the police front in talking with Sergeant Timmy. Not all that surprising when large chunk of the Yukon student body, those that live on campus, went home for spring break earlier in the month. The number of parties and other goings on that raised some concerns in recent weeks dropped off considerably. There is still a large chunk of students that are completing their spring semester in off-campus housing, and so they're going to remain diligent. The resident trooper's office will remain diligent in responding to calls relative to parties, but activity has dropped considerably. The timeline, the exact timeline for backfilling the vacancy that's going to be created by Sergeant Timmy's retirement, the resident trooper supervisor vacancy, is still a little bit unknown. It sounds like, according to Sergeant Timmy, he doesn't expect really the process to start in earnest until closer to June. They haven't announced the position yet. There's no open application period yet. And they will be doing a statewide recruitment. The individual will come from within the Connecticut State Trooper ranks, but they haven't done the announcement yet. And my understanding is that I can still anticipate being an active participant in the screening process as the town manager here. And as I get more details, I'll be happy to share those with you all. And finally, last but not least, Public Works. Public Works began drainage improvements on Mount Hope Road between Wormwood Hill Road and Warrenville Road, Route 89, starting today. And it's going to continue over the next several months. The work will coincide with the drainage improvements that continue on Chaffeeville Road between Mulberry Road and Gurleyville Road. There will be times when the roads in these areas will be closed in order to install drainage structures or install pipe across the road. School bus service, trash service, local traffic will have access. We ask that all residents drive with caution and make sure to look out for work crews so that everybody stays safe. Annual street sweeping of all town-owned paved roads continues, and we are approaching 50% completed. Progress was slowed a little bit over the past week because basically the entire Public Works Operations Division worked on schools while schools were off for April break, and it was easier to work on those facilities. They were catching up on maintenance of various types. And the rest you can see and review at your leisure in my written report. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Aylesworth? Mr. Freudman, followed by Mr. Bruder.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Ellsworth. Just a question about the bid. You mentioned the low bid on the school, $36.4 million. I'm just wondering, does that include just the building, the structure of the building, or does it include such things as the demolition of Southeast School, the installation of the geothermal field, the parking lot, landscaping? I mean, just on big ticket things, what does it encompass? What doesn't it include?
Sure. So I would want to do a little research to make sure I don't quote anything inaccurately here. What I can say is, because the answer to your question lies in when the project manager reported that I believe the number was 40.9 million. I'd have to look at my notes, but I believe that the maximum budget identified for construction, once you back out everything else that would be paid for with the money included in the referendum vote, that obviously includes things like design services and other things. It left 40.9 million for construction specifically. So I would have to re-review the scope of work and or just confirm with our contractor or our project manager whether or not that max project budget that they quoted in one of the recent school school building committee meetings included things like demolition, or if those had been pulled out separately. What I can say, though, David, is that, sorry, Mr. Fordman, is that the we have a fair amount of breathing room. It's about close to a $4 million buffer between the maximum construction budget that our project manager had identified and the low bid. Now, the low bid, again, that's the base bid. There are a number of alternates that will be added. I believe it's like 15 different alternates. And in most cases, those are upcharges. There are a couple that are deduct alternates, but I believe, and again, unfortunately, I don't have my notes in front of me, but I believe even if you tallied all of those up, I believe the final budget still comes in at or perhaps even below $37 million. So there's still a pretty large buffer between where the low bid comes in with the add alternates and the maximum project budget as identified, construction portion of the budget as identified by Colliers.
Mr. Aylesworth, I am fairly certain that demolition is included in that budget.
I'm pretty sure it is. I just don't have the document in front of me.
I think also much of the landscaping, if not all of it. The road construction is not, but I believe
Yeah, I think everything on site is included in that budget. The only things that are part of the bonding but aren't part of what would be reimbursed by the state, I believe, are the off-site improvements, which is why the intersection redesign with 89 and Stores Road, which again is eligible to be covered by what we bond, but won't be partially reimbursed by the state. I believe, though, everything that's on site, whether it's part of the quote-unquote construction budget, is sort of the question. I'm not sure, but it's part of the overall project budget. It was conceived of when we estimated how much we needed to bond for the overall project.
Mr. Bruder, followed by Ms. Berthelot.
If Ms. Berthelot's question is related to this topic, mine's different. She can go for, okay. So then, thank you, Mayor. And I was just gonna ask the esteemed town manager for when you do have input into Sergeant Timmy's upcoming replacement, that we try to find somebody as personality that fits just like Sergeant Timmy's did. He there were some very trying things in terms of like the school resource officer, and I really appreciated the time that he took to go to the meetings and come and talk to me one-on-one. So when you do have those, and I'm sure you'll hear this from others, Sergeant Timmy is a good person for the town, and hopefully we can find somebody that is as well.
I'll be happy to pass on those kind words, Mr. Bruder. I know I've had a number of conversations with Sergeant Timmy about his departure, and I've expressed my own hope again that we are able to actively participate in the screening process, because as everybody here knows, our community is unique with the presence of the university. Every community has different values, different priorities, and certainly finding an individual, especially in the current era of the evolving nature of what is law enforcement in the face of law enforcement. I think it's really important to find somebody who understands, what modern law enforcement, what this community wants of its law enforcement, what it wants law enforcement to look like. And so I'll be happy to pass on those sentiments.
Ms. Berthelot.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just noting the housing rehab program. It's such a terrific program. I'm curious regarding how we advertise about that.
I'd be happy to research that. I'm sure there's information on our website. I don't know if we've done specific social media blasts or special notifications about it. I'd have to do a little more research, but happy to look into that, Councilor Berthelot.
I've become an avid reader of Senior Sparks, and I think that would be a terrific place, and even things coming out of the community center. But it seems that the folks who could most benefit from this may be the least sort of on social media, so pushes in other ways might be helpful. And my other question I think this is probably a no, but I'm curious. Last time we met, we heard about the problem of dying trees on properties and how expensive that is. Is it possible to use this money to deal with problems like that, or does it have to be the house specific?
I'll have to research that a bit more based on what I read previously. I believe it's house specific. It's about making sure that you have a habitable dwelling. But the point I think you're making is well taken. And happy to look into those guidelines and eligibility.
Thank you.
Mr. Aylesworth, I have a tree question that I've been asked by several people in this past week. If CLNP cuts down a tree, who's responsible for disposing of the wood? Are they responsible? I mean, if they leave huge trunks on people's property, who has to take it away?
Yeah, this varies a lot state to state. I'll need to research in Connecticut what the expectation is. I know how it worked in New Hampshire, and to use one state as a comparison, like I said, I have to research and get back to you on Connecticut. But I know in New Hampshire, when a utility was doing tree work and wood was coming down, first the landowner, if they had a use for it because it's their tree, basically they had first right of refusal, whether somebody wanted to mill it, whether they wanted to burn it, whatever, it was their wood. And if not, if it was taken down as part of the project, the utility company, if the owner didn't want it, did have to remove it. And I think they had sort of the option of doing just about anything once they took it off the property. But in Connecticut, I'd have to do a little research to see what the process is here.
I think since I've heard from two separate unrelated people about this question this week, if they are responsible for it, it would be probably a good idea to push them a little on it.
Okay. Thank you.
Shaken.
I remember this coming up a while ago, and I think, if I recall, they are responsible, but they often come back much, much, much later with a different equipment to remove dead trees, and it often takes some prodding from John to make sure that they actually come back.
Yeah, the timeliness factor, I think, tends to be again, I remember that in New Hampshire. They eventually made good on it, but sometimes it was upwards of a year that the log was sitting there. So.
All right. Any further questions for Mr. Aylesworth? If not, then we will move on to reports and comments of council members. Does anybody have a report or comment? All right. Thank you. Then the next item on our agenda is the consent agenda, and we have 4 sets of draft minutes on the consent agenda. Would somebody like to move the consent agenda?
I move adoption of the consent agenda.
Ms. Berthelot seconds. Anybody have any objection to the consent agenda as it stands? Anybody wish to abstain on this? Anybody wish to vote in the negative? Then I declare that the motion to adopt the consent agenda has been passed unanimously. Next item on our business is a COVID update. Mr. Miller, Mr. Aylesworth, and Mr. Miller, welcome back.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Greeting, council members. Start off with just a little data. There has been, in the past couple of weeks, a downturn in the case counts, particularly in Eastern Connecticut, and the Eastern Highlands Health District is also part of that. We saw a 33% reduction in our case count from week ending April 22nd to the prior week, which is a positive thing. Of course, I think much of that, since it does span the period of time which the students departed, I think in part that's a result of the student departure. But I can tell you that the incident rate, again, as of the 22nd of April, is 20 cases per 100,000. Adjusted for the Yukon population, for just the year-round residents, it's 15 cases per 100,000, and that's in comparison to the state of Connecticut, which is at 26 cases per 100,000. In terms of The vaccination campaign, the health districts vaccinated as of last week approximately 9,200 doses within approximately 80 clinics since December. I did just see a recent report that the governor put out this evening that Connecticut coverage is 66% of the population for first dose. Again, adjusted for the Yukon population, I estimate the town of Mansfield's coverage at about approximately 70%. The state has changed the formatting on the vaccine data on the website, so we're still adjusting to that and hope to have improved numbers in our next report, weekly report on that topic. Of course, everybody is aware at this point that Johnson & Johnson Janssen vaccine is off pause. So the health district will once again begin to administer Johnson & Johnson. We do in fact have a clinic, our Thursday clinic at the Mansfield Community Center will be a Johnson & Johnson clinic. So we will be doing both Johnson & Johnson and Moderna for the foreseeable future at our clinics. I should note that well, we're not offering an option in a particular clinic. You know, one clinic is designated Johnson & Johnson, and then a separate clinic is designated as Moderna clinic. We have been seeing slack in our appointments, as is much of the rest of the state and as is the country for that matter. By way of example, I know that the Holly Armory site had up to 2,000 appointments available the week of the 19th, and I believe was only able to fill about approximately 50% of those. For our part, you know, we had a 300 dose clinic scheduled for this Wednesday, and we got maybe 100 of those appointments filled. So there's definitely a waning in the demand, both at the state and certainly at the local level. And we're going to start to pivot and change our approach, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. I did want to note that our homebound program continues. We've received 35 requests district-wide to date. 6 of those are Mansfield residents, and all but 2 of those requests have been fully processed. Not all of them have been vaccinated for one reason or another. Either they got a vaccine somewhere else, or about out the last minute. But the homebound program continues to be on track, and we continue to receive a small number of lists from the state weekly for individuals requesting a homebound vaccination. In terms of next steps, the effort at this point is to try to reach hard to get patients, address vaccine hesitancy, improve messaging. We're currently working with, in cooperation with the state's current efforts to make it easier for individuals to obtain a vaccination. So from this point forward, all of our clinics at Mansfield Community Center will not only will individuals have the option of making an appointment, but they'll also be able to just walk up. And so we're going to be promoting that option to the public. We're going to be posting that to our website tomorrow, and I believe the state has already sent out an announcement in that regard. We'll also be working with some of our community partners, including Access Agency, to identify individuals and groups in the community for which access to vaccine may be a little bit more challenging. And so I'm looking forward to that partnership and initiating some of those activities. And then finally, we're starting to explore ways to get our high school students vaccinated, at least the 16 plus kids, although a number of them are already vaccinated because of the diligent efforts by parents. but the Pfizer vaccine is a little bit harder to obtain, and so we're currently exploring ideas with UConn Health to see if there's a way we can get the high school kids vaccinated. So that concludes my report, and I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Mr. Shakin.
Thanks, Rob. That's a great report. First, since we often hear about people who've gotten a vaccine and had some sort of side effect, I certainly have folks in my family who've had some fevers and chills and muscle aches. Just want to report that if that's one of the reasons why you're thinking about not getting a vaccine, that it doesn't happen to everybody. And the worst thing that happened to me after my second shot was I fell asleep watching TV the night of the shot. But I've otherwise been very busy doing lots of physical activity and felt like $1 million the 48 hours after my second shot. So I think the side effects are over-reported perhaps among the population. I would encourage anyone who's feeling hesitant because of them to take the chance. I have a question for you. It was news to me, which is a good thing that you're starting to offer some of your clinics with no appointment necessary. So first, just a heads up that the state has not updated the website after the governor's announcement today. The closest location they have right now is the medical pharmacy in Willimantic, which is 5 days a week walk up.
I just looked at the email blast that the state health department put out to all vaccine providers, and shucks, I can't pull it up presently, but it did include. Oh, Governor Lamont provides an update on the coronavirus response, and let's see if this. No. Oh yeah. So
the link doesn't have anything in Mansfield yet, but
the one I guess we should confirm that because the link I saw did include stores and did include the community center address. So
someone needs to tell Governor Lamont that people
here it is.
When they look at alphabetical lists, they look at M and not S.
Yeah, they identified it as stores. I
do see that here now. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. If you think it's appropriate, I can certainly get it to change it. Get it changed to Mansfield.
Just a quick question. Just about just in my sort of travels talking to people, it seems like there's appointments available, and anyone who has been motivated to make an appointment seems to have been able to get one, and so now we're shifting into the part of the sort of vaccination program where we are sort of trying to reach out to people who, for whatever reason, haven't been motivated to make an appointment, whether they're hesitant for medical reasons or whether they didn't want to deal with the hassle, et cetera, et cetera. So has there been any sort of conversation to begin to move past a sort of clinic setting for the vaccination program to begin to offer it in more public settings? Has there been any conversation about beginning to make the vaccine widely available in sort of smaller batches at all the different health providers that people might go see, doctors, dentists, et cetera, so people can be offered the vaccine when they go in for other medical appointments? And is the health district part of that, or is it still a clinic-based system that you're going to be working?
We are and have been engaged in those approaches. For example, the state did reach out to all the private practices who had initially identified an interest in, and informed them that they are now looking through those applications and will be authorizing many private practices around the state for distribution of the COVID vaccine. I am aware that there are a few in the Mansfield and Health District area that are part of that group that will be receiving. I don't want to state publicly here at this point, but I am aware that there are some practices locally that are working to receive the vaccine, and they'll be in a position to start providing vaccination to their patients. In addition to that, the strict vaccine the strict management of the vaccine to assure that we didn't waste any doses and things like that, which very much drove the mass vaccination campaign in terms of managing a particular clinic at the end of it. Everybody I think recognizes now, if you've got a patient in front of you who's willing to get vaccinated, then you put a vaccine in his arm, even if it means that you may have to tap a vial, and may find it challenging to match up patients for the balance of the doses in that vial. So definitely the approach is changing to match, I think, the need to make it as easy as possible and to reach out as effectively as possible to those who either have access issues or hesitancy issues.
You know, I always remember that day that you did testing in the town square for people in the Oaks, and the lines of people who waited for an hour or more to get
Right.
tested. I keep wondering, why couldn't we do that again, but with a vaccine?
Well, I think we're kind of past the point where we'll be able to draw those kinds of crowds. You know, as I said, you know, we have our E.O. Smith clinic scheduled for Wednesday, and we are going to open that up to walk-ins, but it's on the short notice. It's going to be promotion will be a bit limited, but we're really focusing on next couple of days promoting our walk-in sites at the community center on Thursdays and Mondays and some Tuesdays.
Okay. Any other questions, Mr. Katzenberger?
Thank you, and thank you, Rob. As always, an excellent report. Do you have, I mean, there's been a fair amount written in the news, at least, about vaccine hesitancy and various reasons nationally. Do you have a sense, even if anecdotal, do you have a sense of why people in our region and Eastern Highlands are maybe hesitant? Does it differ at all? Are there particular concerns that are more acute here than, say, elsewhere?
So yeah, Councilman Katzenberg, I'm honestly not sure. My sense is, and this is purely anecdotal with a small sampling or handful of people I've spoken to over the past few months, is that it ranges from, you know, just young people who, you know, don't necessarily see themselves as at particular risk to other people who simply note some of the stereotypical things you hear about, like the quick turnaround. I want to wait to see what's going on, see how other people react to it. I'm you know, a bit suspicious of how quickly this was developed. To I think those who just, you know, those who just kind of subscribe to some of the conspiracy theories out there. So I'm not sure we're particularly different from the sample of issues that are out there in a particular population.
Okay, no, but thank you. That's helpful. Thanks.
Anything else for Mr. Miller? Ben?
Yeah, I actually had a question related to Peter's. I've heard, this is totally anecdotal, sort of among people that I know. I've heard in particular a piece of hesitancy around the technology in the mRNA nature of the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines. And I've actually, which I don't subscribe to, I was vaccinated with the Pfizer vaccine, but I've had a surprising number of people say, yeah, I'd get the J&J because that's technology that's been around for half a century, but I'm just concerned about the other, you know, the new technology and the other vaccines. So I'm curious if, as we begin to have a glut of vaccine doses available, and whether there's going to be more of an ability for people to pick and choose the brand that they receive and to sort of seek out a Johnson & Johnson vaccine. I've also heard a lot of people with the preference for the J&J because it's a one and done, you don't have to worry about it. So I'm just sort of curious if that's something that's on the horizon as well.
Well, again, as part of our efforts to mitigate hesitancy or make vaccine preferences, as you know, to make preferences available as a way to mitigate hesitancy, we are administering, for at least for the month of May, both J&J and Moderna. So people will have an option. We're going to be publicizing which one of our walk-in clinics are J&J and which one are Moderna. So they will have an option from that perspective.
I have a question. Do you think that our publicity that's aimed at residents reaches the student population living in town?
Yes. Well, I can tell you certainly with respect to, our communications and our efforts to promote the local clinics has been a joint effort by my office and by the University Communications Office. I've been meeting weekly with the work group which coordinates the Holly Armory site. And so all of our communications have been coordinated. And so certainly so we're seeing, we saw many UConn students at both our clinics and at the Holly Armory site.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you very much. It would be very nice to see Mansfield out of the red zone on those maps, but
you're very close.
Well, and we're also considered very high risk in Talent County, according to the New York Times. But the New York Times standard seems to be so high.
Yeah, see, that's the challenge with the way data is presented. It's often apples to oranges. What the New York Times does is slightly different what the State Department of Public Health does, which is slightly different from what the CDC does. And that's the challenge of being an epidemiologist during a pandemic response, of which I am not one, but I don't envy them their job.
Okay, thank you very much once again.
You're welcome.
And I think we can move on to the next next agenda item, which is the town annual meeting preparations and budget review calendar. Mr. Aylesworth.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. At your April 12th meeting, you'll recall we talked about the implications of the new Executive Order 10E that is allowing municipalities to modify their budget approval dates, as well as change their charter required town meeting dates, in light of the fact that we are still combating COVID-19, and every additional week and month of delay that we can assume before we get people together is a good thing in terms of reducing potential exposure. And as we discussed at length at the last meeting, there's additional benefits in the form of useful information that would be available at a later date that would not be available should town meeting happen on May 11th of this year as the charter dictates. So with your authorization at last meeting, you all officially moved back the date at which the town council's budget adoption will be finalized from tonight to May 24th. And we talked about possible town meeting dates in June. We did not, or you did not act on any. You provided guidance, which I very much appreciate. And we then in turn started to check on the availability of venues to see what would be available on those particular dates. And I'm happy to report that it appears that the football field at E.O. Smith High School is available. We zeroed in on Tuesday, June 15th. It would appear that the facility is available for our use at town meeting. I know I had a conversation with the mayor and deputy mayor last week when we were reviewing items for this meeting's agenda, and we discussed the merits of this would of course be an outdoor meeting, but we discussed the merits of moving up the start time a little bit, still being mindful of people's work commutes and making sure people can get home from work in time to attend the meeting. But in the interest of having the meeting completed during daylight hours or close to daylight hours, moving up the start time to 6 p.m. from 7. That's the usual start time of the meeting. So basically what's on the table now and is the recommendation of staff is a June 15th town meeting with a start time of 6 p.m. at the E.O. Smith Regional High School football field. And so that's the first piece of that. And then moving backwards from that, obviously there will be a need to adopt the budget, which would happen on May 24th, as you guys already decided, but also schedule a public information session, as well as I'm going to recommend one additional meeting before the adoption of the budget. So the dates that I wanted to recommend to the council to add to the calendar, as it stands now, there's not an additional date, or the next date on the budget calendar is May 24th. I'm proposing that we add May 17th as a date to do a review of an updated series of budget recommendations. You can provide feedback, and that way there won't be as much pressure to work everything out in the span of one meeting. I see it as potentially problematic to try to go into May 24th without any additional back and forth discussion. For me to present numbers, revised numbers based on the feedback you've provided, and hope that we've gotten it right and the council's 100% supportive of that budget. So I would propose May 17th. If there are any issues that still need to be worked out, those could be resolved then by the 24th. So that's the first date, adding an additional budget workshop on May 17th. And then assuming that a budget gets adopted on May 24th, adding the second public information session relative to the adoption of the FY 21-22 budget for either June 7th, 8th, or 9th. That's basically anywhere from 6 to 8 days prior to the proposed town meeting date of June 15th. And that's consistent with when the time frame for when the second public information session has been held. It's usually about a week before town meeting. And so those are the recommendations, and associated motions related to those recommendations are included in the agenda item summary.
Okay, there are 3 motions on page 42. There is, they could be made all together. However, there is one piece of information that has not been resolved, and that is the date for the June public hearing. And Mr. Aylesworth suggests the 7th, 8th, or 9th. When does the General Assembly adjourn, Ben? Is it the 9th? Yes, okay. So we'll have some pretty good idea by that week of what's going to be in the budget for towns and cities. We already know that the budget, the appropriations, the governor is going to veto because it requires a tax policy that that finance has proposed, but which he has announced that he would not sign. So we know there's going to be a problem. So first of all, let's talk about the date, Mr. Bruder.
I had input on that, and I can make the motions if you need when we're ready. For the dates, I would just ask that we not do June 9th, as that's already an ad hoc committee on affordable housing meeting night. But we can always move that if we need to. It's just, if possible, the 7th, that Monday, might be better.
Okay. And this is going to be a virtual meeting, I assume.
Yeah, right now, the executive order extends through May 20th. We won't know for sure what happens next until whatever happens next happens next. I know that there's, I guess you could say speculation, but, pretty close to confirmation. It sounds like through the end of the current fiscal year, virtual meetings will be permitted. I don't know, Kevin, not to put you on the spot, maybe you're hearing something different, but all the indications we've been hearing from CCM is that the expectation is remote meetings will be authorized through the end of June.
Mr. Levine?
That's what everyone's hoping for. There doesn't appear to be a lot of appetite to extend the governor's powers beyond May 20th, so it would have to be a legislative fix. Hopefully is in the works for that.
Mr. Katchenberger.
Thank you. I wonder if with the legislature convening, on the June 10th, and then because how important that is obviously to the budget, would it make sense to move the meeting a week later so we actually have time during the week of June 14th to work out the final details and then have the public hearing or meeting? I mean, I'm okay with the schedule, and and any of those days suggested are fine with me for the public hearing, but I don't know if we should delay a bit more so we can look into that information.
You have to work backwards from the 1st of July. In order for the tax bills to go out in time, we have to have a budget by the 15th.
Okay.
So, and
I thought that deadline was extended.
the last we heard was the budget the taxation has been delayed, all kinds of things, but not the start of the fiscal year.
Well, no, but I didn't know.
So, in order to get the bills out in time, we have to have a town budget on the 15th.
Okay.
So, we can't do a public information session much closer than the 9th to that, because it doesn't give people an opportunity to be heard or to be informed. So it's gonna have to be that week, the 7th, 8th, or 9th. Mr. Aylesworth, is there any conflict with rooms or with access to IT on the 7th, 8th, or 9th? There's got to be some conflict.
I'm researching that now. If IT or Tasha knows the answer to that, feel free to chime in, but I'm having to look.
I don't know off the top of my head. I would have to look too.
Well, if we do it, all my screens are busy. I can't go look at the town calendar. If we do it virtually, we ought to be able to do it on Monday the 7th, shouldn't we? I'm pretty sure that we conflict with planning and zoning on Tuesdays.
Right now, so I'm looking at Monday, and Monday from 6:30 to 10:30 is a scheduled Inland Wetlands Agency and PZC meeting on Monday the 7th.
I don't think we should conflict with that.
And then I'm not seeing conflicts, I don't think, on the 8th. So the 8th would seem to be the better of the two.
All right. Would the 8th work for everybody? Any
Yes.
reason why we shouldn't do the 8th? All right. I think, Mr. Bruder, you can make the motions.
Okay, so I'd like to move pursuant to Executive Order 10E, move to schedule the 2021 annual town meeting for June 15th, beginning at 6 p.m. at the E.O. Smith Regional High School football field. I'd also like to move pursuant to Executive Order 10E, move to add an additional budget workshop on May 17th, 2021, beginning at 7 p.m. to the official fiscal year 2021-2022 budget review calendar. And finally, pursuant to Executive Order 10E, move to schedule the second public information session relative to fiscal year 2021-2022 budget for June 8th, 2021, beginning at 7 p.m.
Is there a second to Mr. Bruder's motion? Ms. Berthelot seconds. Mr. Bruder was right behind her. I guess he thirds. Any discussion? Mr. Bruder, you want to speak to your motions?
Other than to say that I think that this could hopefully get bipartisan support, for all the reasons we've already discussed.
Anybody else wish to comment? Is there anybody who wishes to abstain from this motion? Is there anybody who wishes to vote in the negative on this motion? Seeing no objection, I'm going to rule that this motion has been adopted unanimously. Thank you. All right, the next item on our agenda is the Human Rights Commission letter to Hartford Healthcare. Mr. Aylesworth?
There's a agenda item summary in your packet, as well as a copy of the letter. And I believe, Heather Evans from the Human Rights Commission is here. So rather than provide the summary, since we have a representative from the Human Rights Commission here, I'll happy to turn the floor over to Heather to walk us through it.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Manager Ainsworth. I'm happy to be representing the Human Rights Commission, and we would like to receive permission to send a letter to Hartford Healthcare. It came to our attention that Wyndham Hospital has made plans to permanently close their labor and delivery services. This obviously will impact many people. It will impact disproportionately the most vulnerable people in our community. Right now, we have a situation where people with adequate transportation and resources can choose where they want to receive their prenatal care, their labor and delivery care, and their postpartum care. They often drive into Hartford, to Bacchus, to many different areas to receive their care. People without adequate transportation, with limited resources, with limited language skills, they really rely on healthcare in their own communities. And we feel that healthcare is a human right, and that we should support healthcare within our communities for our most vulnerable people. So we just would like to send this letter to Hartford Hospital, urging them to reconsider their decision to close labor and delivery services at Wyndham Hospital. And in fact, we'd like them to expand the services. They really made the decision to close the unit in the middle of the pandemic. There weren't very many people notified. There wasn't a process in place where public could comment about it. So we just want to make it known that we do believe that healthcare is a human right, and we should preserve this very important service for our residents, our neighbors, especially those who are vulnerable. Right now, with it closing, somebody who would deliver there will have to be transported. 17 miles is the closest. And if they don't have transportation, that means they're going to rely on medical services, ambulance, EMS, to transport them. So not only is it a economic burden, but that's time that is valuable in terms of their health and well-being. And we already know that people of color are disproportionately affected by the negative health outcomes because of our failures in our healthcare systems. So we want to make it known to Hartford Healthcare that we don't agree with them closing labor and delivery at Wyndham Hospital.
I need to tell you that I have actually been involved in this decision to some very minor degree. The decision to close this was made about 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And at the time the hospital made it, they held multiple meetings with community members. They had meetings with local mayors and town leaders. They had meetings with local organizations. They presented the case for closing the maternity ward, and the argument they made to me, which I found most persuasive, is that there weren't enough babies being born there to keep qualified staff. The problem was that in order to have a qualified maternity birthing center, you had to have a certain number of births, and you had to have people who had a certain amount of experience. And there were so few births at that hospital that they could neither provide the nurses nor the doctors who were properly trained. So it had become less than safe. And that they were promising not only to continue to provide maternity care, that is pre-birth and postpartum care, but also that if a woman needed transportation, that they would provide transportation to the hospital of her choice. So at the time, it seemed to me to be they were between a sort of rock and a hard place. And while I was very concerned about the impact on local people, they assured me that they had been taking these concerns very much into account and were going to be providing for them. So in any case, what I wanted to make the council aware of is that there had been consultation, there had been a great deal of public opportunity to weigh in on this. And it's at least, it did not happen during the pandemic. It happened at least a year before. I had just become mayor, so it had to be like midwinter 2019 is my guess. Ms. Evans?
Yes, I'm sorry. I think I misspoke. The decision to close, the final decision of closing was made during the pandemic, but there were some discussions that went on before. We just don't believe that there was adequate notification for the public, especially in terms that the public could understand. Again, when we're talking about the most vulnerable people, we have to make sure that they have opportunities to weigh in on the topic in a way in which is meaningful. But so that's why in our letter we state that we in fact would like, rather than to close, but to increase the services, offering more services, because what Windham Hospital did is over a number of years they slowly whittled it down to the point where you are correct. Safety is a factor when you have nurses and physicians who don't have adequate opportunity to practice what they're performing. But the hospital didn't do anything out to whittle down after they lost Mansfield OBGYN in probably, what was that, 2016 or 17. They moved to ECHN. They still have their office here in Mansfield, but they perform their deliveries at Manchester Memorial Hospital. And the hospital at that point just allowed the services to dwindle rather than looking for ways to improve services. In fact, they didn't even hire new staff. They hired locum tenens, so temporary physicians to come in and fill the positions for labor and delivery there. So we still have the same concerns that we feel like the people should have access to care in their community.
Mr. Osberger, followed by Mr. Bruder. Charlie, are you there? Go ahead.
Yeah. I'd like to speak in support of this this letter. It baffles me that they would do something like this. Of course, my daughter was born there, so yeah, I absolutely am in support of this, Heather.
Yeah, I gotta say, my son was born there too, and I had friends who said, "Why didn't you go to Manchester? All the good doctors are going to Manchester." Mr. Bruder.
Yes, I just wanted to lend my support to this letter. I think that the draft that we've been provided is, I think it calls for them to stop closing it, and I think it is already closed. And maybe that's just the version, or what I saw quickly. And I think it's important to note for my fellow town council members that, as somebody who has 7 kids, I very much know the birthing doctors and other, options that are in this area. And one thing we were told by the Wyndham administration is that they don't take certain births. So not only are you seeing nationwide a decrease in births everywhere, but you're also seeing, or what I was told, Wyndham's reduction in what level of risk they would take. For instance, we had twins. Everything went fine, but they just didn't want to even have Mansfield OBGYN giving birth in the hospital. I think that also had to do with the level of commitment of technology that they provided. So if you have administrators that are making decisions that, that they can then point to and say, see, look, we're having less births that are coming through the door. Well, what is the criteria that you're allowing people in through that door? And, I think that this is a reflection in a positive light for Hartford Healthcare, that we want these services here. We're not asking them to leave. So I hope that, if they are listening, or if anyone is associated with the hospitals listening, they understand that, we'd really prefer to be able to have this hospital in our community providing the services that the residents need, and not have to go 17 miles. It'd be interesting to know how much they're advertising that they'll provide transportation. How many people have taken advantage of that? How many rides have they given? Certainly for us in Mansfield, we would have loved to have been able to have our children here in town. I think out of the 7, 2 were. And I think that part of that was a reflection of the administration's changes to what they allowed in. And so, again, I can see what time it is already, and I just will say I support this letter. Thank you.
Mr. Katzenberger, followed by Mr. Shaken, followed by Mr. Shuren.
Well, for the reasons given by, of course, by the excellent presentation, also Charlie and Sam, I support this too. And it's an excellent letter. It's their letter. I had one thought or question, which is, assuming the data supports it, and you make excellent points about the disparity in health outcomes with people of color, women of color. And if that's certainly in Willimantic at least, but if there's this area, if the Servin region that the hospital serves has a higher number than, say, statewide average, that would be worth, I think, noting. But I support, of course, the letter either way.
Mr. Shaken, followed by Mr. Shuren.
Just to say, I also think this letter is a good idea, and just a reminder to the council, it's before us because the Human Rights Commission, is interested in expressing their opinion. Our rules are here for a good reason, but it's not like they're asking the council to send a letter on behalf of the council. This is about the Human Rights Commission, and I think that's important. I'll also say, that this is not a new phenomena with Hartford Healthcare at Wyndham Hospital. Certainly Hartford Healthcare's acquisition of the hospital many years ago likely saved it from, as independent hospitals became fewer and far between. But this sort of notion of care decisions being made, and then after a period of time, the public proclamation that the demand is no longer there to sustain the care being offered at Wyndham Hospital is nothing new. It's something that's happened there several times over the last decade. I get the economics of it. I get that in the emergency department, most folks are triaged into Bacchus and Hartford at this point. but and we've dealt with that as a council when it comes to the demand on our ambulances to travel to Norwich or Hartford rather than Willimantic, and how that's affected our bottom line budgetarily and our personnel. But this is usually a medical procedure that has a lot of advanced planning, and it ought to be an option for folks to plan for whatever reason is right for them to do it as close to their homes as they can. So, I think it's a good idea for us to support it, and I think, and I will be voting for it.
Sure.
Yeah, just a small question. It might have been in the materials. I didn't see. Is there a NICU at right now at Wyndham? No, there's not.
NICU?
Neonatal intensive care unit. It's not there. Okay.
Oh, a NICU? No.
No.
Okay. All right. The motion is on page 51. Is there somebody who would like to make it? Mr. Bruder.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just getting to the right page. I was looking at the draft while we were talking. I would like to, hold on. I apologize. I would like to move effective April 26, 2021 to authorize the Human Rights Commission to send a letter to Hartford Healthcare addressing the human rights concerns regarding the closure of Wyndham Hospital Maternity Ward.
Seconded by Ms. Berthelot. Do you wish to speak to your motion?
Other than what I've already said, I could go on about this for a long time, but I hope that the rest of the council can also support such a great endeavor, and I'm glad that the Human Rights Commission was here to make that presentation. Thank you, Ms. Evans.
Okay. Are we ready to vote? Is there anybody who wishes to abstain? Is there anybody who wishes to vote in the negative? Then I am going to rule that this motion has been adopted unanimously.
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Next item on our agenda is a proclamation in honor of Municipal Town Clerks Week. Mr. Aylesworth, could this have gone into the consent agenda?
It probably could have. I was thinking that just as we were transitioning to it. But if we put it on the consent agenda, I wouldn't have had an opportunity to introduce it and make sure that the public's aware of what it is. So perhaps it could have, but then we would have had less airtime for it. So I'm going to speak to this because I think that Sarah Ann and her crew deserve some recognition, and they're too humble to acknowledge the work that they do. So the 52nd Annual Professional Municipal Clerks Week will take place internationally from May 2nd to May 8th, 2021. The event was initiated by the International Institute of Municipal Clerks in 1969 with support from its full membership in the United States, Canada, and 15 other countries to celebrate and reflect on the important role that clerk's office plays in local government. President Ronald Reagan declared the first full week of May to be Municipal Clerks Week in 1984, and President Bill Clinton confirmed the same by proclamation in 1994 and 1996. Locally, the staff in the office of the town clerk exhibit the utmost dedication and unwavering resolve throughout this pandemic. With innovation, strength, and humor, they have carried on providing essential services such as marriage licenses, processing death certificates, issuing birth certificates, and recording property transactions. Most notably, and not without personal sacrifice, our clerks handled the absentee ballot crisis during the 2020 presidential preference primary and presidential election with tireless professionalism and grace, processing thousands of applications and ballots and ensuring a fair and free election. So for those reasons, speaking for myself and I think all our staff, I wholeheartedly recommend that the council authorize Mayor Moran to issue the attached proclamation. And if you concur with that recommendation, there's a motion to be read in the agenda item summary.
The motion is on page 61. Ms. Berthelot?
I'll make the motion unless somebody else is going to make a comment.
Go right ahead.
I move effective April 26, 2021, to authorize the mayor to issue the attached proclamation in honor of Professional Municipal Clerks Week.
Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Bruder, and Mr. Shern, and Mr. Koschenberger. I think that this is a community that has been extraordinarily well served by its town clerks, and we really are proud to have them, and to have them doing the work that they're doing. So, is there anybody who wishes to comment on this motion? We could go on at some length about everything that's been done this year, but I really, it's almost 9 o'clock. Is there anybody who wishes to abstain on this motion? Is there anybody who wishes to vote in the negative? Then I am going to rule that this motion has been adopted unanimously. Thank you. And I hope the town staff is going to do something nice for this week. I don't know, we'll send flowers or something to everybody. We should certainly do something to honor these folks.
Just before we transition, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you typically read the proclamations or no, in their entirety?
No.
Okay. Next up on the agenda, and thank you, Council, for approving that. Next up on the agenda, we've been talking for a while now about periodic updates from departments and or department heads. And I think everybody felt like they got good use and good information out of the presentation that John Carrington gave on DPW summer projects and activities upcoming. As you all know, we have a new communications specialist, well, really a new position, and also a new person in that position, Margaret Chady. And as she approaches or passes in the near term here, the 6-month mark of her tenure, we thought it'd be a good time for her to check in with the council and provide, basically a quick flyover on work that she's been doing, priorities that we've set, and where we think we should be going from here. And of course, welcome a give and take with the council and some feedback on the council if you think there are additional things that we might want to look into doing. So if you bear with me, I'm going to share my screen here. All right. And of course, I accidentally, there you go. I got to get to the first slide. All right. So Margaret will be leading the presentation. I just want to put this in the right context. Obviously, this was a position that was created the past year. It was created, I believe, at the right time, because there was a lot going on with COVID-19 and a tremendous amount of public information that needed to get out there. And so Margaret started in early November. Basically, the hiring of the position was moved up a little bit in recognition of what was going on with the pandemic and the need for the services from the individual that would be in the position. This is a shared position between the town of Mansfield and the Board of Education. So Margaret's in a somewhat unique position of having 2 bosses, myself and Superintendent Kelly Lyman. Overarching goals of the position, obviously want to put the town and frame the town the right way, cultivate a positive public image, want her to work on developing and editing important communication materials, and that spans the gamut from traditional forms of print media to website and other publications, provide direct support to departments on communication and outreach efforts that they're doing at the department level, and working on planning and strategic communication plans with staff. And I think Margaret's done a tremendous amount in her first 6 months, and I look forward to her sharing with you some of what that work has been.
Ryan,
yes.
We can't see the presentation. If you intended to show it to us, we can't see.
Oh, that's says I'm doing a screen share. Let me.
I don't see anything on your screen.
Okay, let me back out and do it again.
Have materials in our pack.
Okay. So yeah, this was what I basically just overviewed. Won't repeat it. And this is, you know, a distilled version of the town's vision as pulled from the Mansfield Tomorrow Plan. And so we're going to talk with you, and Margaret's going to talk with you about the role of communications in achieving this vision. Margaret, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ryan. And thank you, Mayor Moran, Deputy Mayor Shaken, and all of the town council for allowing me to join you this evening on the full pink moon, the super moon going on outdoors, correct? And I want to tell you how privileged I feel I am to be here working in Mansfield in a communications capacity. I've had a tremendous amount of experience working for all kinds of different companies and corporations, and in the banking industry, and with agriculture, retail, for nonprofits. And so for me to be able to bring this experience to Mansfield, this is a tremendous product that I have to talk about, and I'm really pleased to be here. So you were very clear in articulating, if you could go back one, Ryan, you have invested a tremendous amount of time and the departments and the community with input about how you might come up with a distinct identity around positioning your community as a great place in which to live, work, learn, play, and visit. And this branding exercise to try to carve out what is that unique piece of real estate that we can own in the minds of our target audiences. And so if you think about your place to grow, Mansfield, Connecticut, and the work that was done to arrive at that brand, it really does serve as your brand's promise. Go ahead, Ryan. And in the time prior to me coming, and in the time that I've been here, you've begun to roll out the commitment to your brand through the communications toolkit, which really articulates for all of the users how to apply this brand mark. You can't miss the fact that the power of that brand on the banners on the street, on the town vehicles that roll down the street, the stationary system, you know, every email, every letter, and then also the seeing through that we wanted to upgrade to a better website, so that our communications could be clearer by, you know, investing in professional photography and this email outreach capability, which our residents told us in the branding work was a way that they really preferred to receive communications. We've also, through this branding work, the town of Mansfield, the departments and support staff have certainly increased social media engagement. I just wanted to, you know, sort of stop there to tell you that there are probably, you know, 15, 17, maybe even more at this point, different Facebook pages that represent different aspects of the town of Mansfield and its communications and marketing. But if you focus on sort of the core 5 or 6, the library, the community center, the town of Mansfield, which I am the administrator for, as well as Mansfield Public Schools, that we have about 12,000 followers just among the core Facebook pages. So if we merge our messages and we do the kind of sharing out when it makes sense to do so, that we can be reaching, you know, 12,000 people with the push of a button. And I think, you know, even in the time that I've been here with the town of Mansfield's site, where I'm trying to do a Facebook post every day, trying to keep this current because there are so many amazing stories to tell, both for Mansfield Public School and for the town of Mansfield. And a lot of people say, well, you know, social media, Facebook, you know, that it's passé, it's not the way to go. But we have grown cumulatively. So we have 1,200 more followers today than we did when I came in the first part of November. So there are an increasing number of people who are coming to us looking for information that way. The town obviously committed to this staff position, and Kathleen Patterson and Cynthia Van Zellum have done a tremendous amount of work with this Explore Our Town, actually giving us a marketing piece that we can use to market ourselves. So you've already done a tremendous amount of work in this area. Ryan? But one of the things that I want to make sure that we think about, and this is really as a communications professional, I always try to start the conversation with someone about a project, who are we communicating with or to whom? And we have many different internal audiences, starting with our own employees, folks like you, as well as volunteer boards and commissions who invest a tremendous amount of time in this community. They're passionate, you're passionate about what happens here. We need to make sure that you know what's going on, and that we think about our internal audiences as our first audience. But there's also, vast numbers of people who are external audiences who need to know, when we make this brand promise, what does it mean to me when you say to me, Mansfield, your place to grow? We have, obviously our own residents and influencers here. The University of Connecticut, of course, there's a vast number of people there, from the leadership down to the student who becomes a resident of Mansfield for 4 years. They become a very important audience for us because they're having an experience here. And then many other folks, including our elected officials, we really need to think very hard about what is it that we want them to know and what action do we want them to take. Ryan? So really what we're talking about is Mansfield's brand promise, but articulating to each audience what does that brand promise mean to them? And are we really delivering the value? But also, what action do we want that stakeholder to take as a result of what they're learning about us and what we're communicating with them? So we really, it's trying to be very thoughtful about the messaging that we put out and what it is we're trying to achieve by communicating that. So the areas of emphasis for this role have been really continuing to support the brand rollout. And again, this doesn't just exist here at my desk, but obviously in partnership with our Economic Development Commission, our downtown group, and that we are going to continue with this brand rollout plan, enhancing our online presence, trying to do more with the website and social media to make sure that it is portraying us and telling our story the best it can. A concerted effort to market services to residents. It's interesting that if you think about who is paying the bill, who is benefiting the most from the work that we do here in Town Hall, and I think that we want to make sure that every town person understands the value that they're getting and what the opportunities are for them, for their family, for their future by living here. We also, as part of my onboarding, I interviewed most of the department heads just to sort of see how does communication happen today and what are the systems that are in place, because we want to make sure that everything is being articulated well. So going forward, we have been doing the COVID updates. That's been an important effort and initiative, working with Rob, trying to make sure that every time there's a change that we're pushing out that information. Clearly, the town managers bi-monthly e-newsletters. What's been interesting for me about that is how many employees have talked about it being a valuable way for them to also get information. So obviously it's helping because there's so much wonderful stuff going on here, right? There's so many great activities that they may not bump into on a daily basis in the hallway. We've tried to really overtly push out more stories and more alerts to the media, press releases and whatnot. This is especially important on the Board of Ed side, where there's so many great stories in every classroom every day in our community. And so we've received, some great ink from some of our local press about some of these stories. And this just, again, reinforces why Mansfield's your place to grow. Wow, what a great place to raise a family and to enroll in school. Go ahead, Ryan. The Board of Ed newsletter that I mentioned there, prior to my coming, Kelly was writing that herself and sending that out for design. So again, it's really, we can sort of accumulate great stories as we go and publish that newsletter, which actually gets mailed to every household in Mansfield 3 times a year. On the department level, even though I primarily work with Ryan and with Kelly, and their projects obviously take priority, but there was definitely a pent-up demand on the part of departments for assistance in helping push out some of the good work that they're doing. And I, with all of the childcare and food assistance grant, this whole affordable housing survey, we received, I believe, somewhere north of 800 responses to the survey. We really had a concerted effort of social media, postcards. I mean, we tried to really have this campaign hang together. We tried to do similar things too, even with recycling and composting, working with Ginny to create a sort of an Earth Day Month initiative where there's continual communications, because again, saying something once does not do it. You need to sort of repeat over and over again. And I want to give a shout out to them because they published with a volunteer who created a video for us. We have somewhere like 4,000 people who view this video and 42 people sharing it about where does your waste go once you put it in the trash can at the transfer station or roadside. And, that's communicating that little bit of value about the work that Town Hall is doing, that your services are bringing you. And now people know where their plastic goes when it gets picked up by Willie Waste and down the road. So these kinds of projects, I think, have been valuable. I am getting the sense that they're really well appreciated by our departments, that they have some help now in pushing out the key communication. Ryan? So moving forward, our priorities, or my priorities, we're very close, I think, to coming up with a solution for a community-wide calendar. I've been working with IT and the marketing team on that. Again, trying to really continue with the press to use them as another media outlet. Ryan committing to doing Wayne Norman's show once a month is great, because not only is he on the radio that morning, but then the tape of it becomes available to us as a communication method that we can push out and people consume. So it's like getting a live 20-minute update from the town manager every month that we don't produce, that comes from another source. The new elementary school building project is a very high priority for both Ryan and Kelly. Obviously, this is a big commitment for the community, and we're anxious to get as much information into people's hands as we transition from this design phase into the construction phase. We'll be working on a website for that. And Ryan is also, I think, interested in trying to do more with video. And I agree. I think that people like to consume stories that way, and that's an initiative that we'll push on. I'll also talk about just experiential marketing. Unfortunately, with COVID, we haven't had the opportunity to provide many people face-to-face experiences. But I think that as things get back to normal and we can engage with people, find ways to engage with people. I was today at the Spring Resource Fair that Ryan referred to. It was coordinated by the school district down at Halinko Estates. But what was wonderful is that youth services was there, the fire department was there. We were promoting the food assistance, the food share pickup. It's like all these different departments that were represented, targeting a specific geographic area of people that we think could really use some of these services. And it was just nice to see that interaction and people having a positive experience with the community. And I think that that's important from a communication perspective as well. So the Munis rollout is another important project moving forward. I think that the buy-in internally with employees about how important this is to the community and to the systems and functioning of our organization. I'm hoping to give Charmaine some support as she does that. But we also have a lot of strategic planning work to do at the municipal level, at the Board of Ed level, downtown stores, that I'm hoping to be able to contribute some insight there. And like I said before, just looking for other ways that we can use communication as an enhancement to every department's plan going forward. That when we think about, John thinks about putting in a new section of sidewalk, that there's a communications element, a communications plan that goes with that, so that people will understand, again, going back to the brand promise, when we say, Mansfield, your place to grow, what does our target audience take away from that? And that everything we do can be hung on that brand promise, that we're coming through the way that we should as a community. So that concludes my summary. Are there any questions?
I just want to say before we get to the first, few questions here again, how much I've appreciated what Margaret's doing. My early time here, obviously, we both started in early portion of winter, and I know firsthand how difficult it is to, when you're drinking from the fire hose, to get up to speed on so many things, and you're dealing with a pandemic, unprecedented pandemic on top of it, which makes everything harder. Meeting stakeholders, engaging with people, kind of learning the lay of the land. It makes something that would be challenging under any circumstance. Learning a new community, becoming immersed in a new community is always challenging, but doing it during these unprecedented times, very challenging. And again, I just want to say how much I've appreciated, Margaret's, stick-to-itiveness, her willingness to really put in the time and log the hours to get up to speed on what different departments and organizations in the community are doing.
Mr. Katzenberger, did you have your hand up?
I did. Yes, thank you, Mary.
Mr. Bruder. Mr. Katzenberger, followed by Mr. Bruder. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Margaret. That was really helpful. And I think this is great. You mentioned some of it in the beginning, but if you could just again go over how are you tracking the hits or the metrics in terms of which, how many people are clicking on the links and then going further, and in terms of determining what seems to be most successful.
So, measuring the impact of communications is always a challenge, no matter what kind of communications you're measuring. And so because I am the administrator for a few of our social media pages, and I really do view all of the other administrators as my partners. And so we collectively, they're very willing to share that information with me. And I think that as part of the strategic planning process going forward, that we will probably try to build in some measurements so that we can see our progress, and to try to do more analytics with both our social media as well as our website to really know what pages are people landing on, which ones are they clicking to, which ones aren't getting any visits, how can we improve it? So there are some ways to sort of use some of that to set up some metrics that help us improve what it is we're doing. And again, I feel like I have a great team around me with Jamie and his IT folks, and they're willing to sort of dig in and learn and hunt, as well as the other marketing folks that I'm working with.
Mr. Bruder, followed by Mr. Shuren.
I thank you so much for all the work that you're doing. I have to say the consistency with branding has been a big thing. You know, I don't think I really recognized it until you were talking about it, but you're right. I mean, I see it on the trucks. I see it on all the like the postcards that go out, you know, the affordable housing, and any of the materials that are coming to me as a town council member. It's consistent. So I very much appreciate that. And for a question, I don't know if this has been thought of at all, but in the past on other like construction projects that I've either been interested in or been involved in, the you know, like a time lapse kind of camera to watch the school get built. I've even participated or had discussions on how they would coordinate it to drop so that a class would be there live and, you know, that sort of deal. But that's always a fun thing that gets a lot of interaction too.
Well, that is absolutely a part of the website plan that is put forward. In fact, Alan and his department of facilities has already looked into vendors who do that kind of time lapse coverage of those kinds. So there will be some sort of a live cam on the website for the new school. And I also know that Kelly is hoping to make the website have enough information so that students in the coming year might be assigned to do some sort of an assignment where they go to the website, learn about the school, and then tie that into their schoolwork. So it's going to be exciting, and by all means, you know, we want people to be there on site virtually if they'd like to be.
You're already light years ahead of what I was thinking. Thank you very much for the update.
Tony, you're muted.
Mr. Shuren, followed by Mr. Shaker.
Thank you very much, and wonderful examples of communication. Communication is a mutual process, and you alluded to this a bit, but I want to kind of encourage and get a sense that there is some kind of system for receiving back from the various constituencies, members of the community, and then acting on what is received as a guide to the town staff and to us, and making this process a mutual one rather than a one-way one.
You're right. It's a two-way communication, and you have done a tremendous amount of that, arriving at a lot of the strategic planning work, the Mansfield Tomorrow work, the branding work. You have asked for a lot of input, but you're right, on an ongoing basis. I really look forward to the comments that I see on social media and the kinds of responses, because then if someone needs more information, we know, you know, what they're lacking and what we can do to help. Thank you.
Mr. Shaken.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, just to echo Ron's comments, I think that's a great sort of next step for where we're at as a town. I think you've done a lot of great work in the first 6 months. Also, hello, Margie. Good to see you. We are friends from long before this job, although I was very pleasantly surprised to hear that you had started this job. It was a very surprising piece of news, and I'm very happy to see you working here, and you've done some awesome stuff. Margie owns a distillery in Ashford, for folks who don't know, and one of the most beautiful pieces of property I've ever been on in my life. So I'm very happy to have you communicating on behalf of the town, and I've noticed just a really significant improvement to how the town has communicated with folks since you started. And so, you know, just echo what Ron said, that as far as I'm concerned, the next big step here is how do we draw residents who aren't normally engaged in the town's day-to-day activities into what's going on, you know, both in our government, but also just in town generally. And how does the town of Mansfield as a government sort of help facilitate better communication among everyone here about everything that's great about Mansfield and everything that we've got to offer. So it sounds like you're just getting started, and I'm very, very happy we added this position into the budget. I think it'll pay off in dividends.
Thank you for your kind words. Yes, I agree. I think that there is such a unlimited number of amazing stories that we have to tell. And really communications is storytelling, but with, not just to say, and they lived happily ever after, but to engage people. That's what stories do. And that's what we're hoping to continue to do. I'm excited about the Citizens Academy, although that's not what we're calling it, but this idea of inviting, a small number of people in to really become intimately involved with the town and the different departments. And I think that, that's the kind of experience that will, I think will bear positive fruit, because I think people, once they see the inside, they will become advocates for us, and that, the testimonial part of storytelling, I think is something else that we can really tap into.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to comment? I've also been really pleased with the improved quality and the fact that we aren't layering more and more work on top of people by giving them the responsibility for communicating everything out of their own offices on their own, with whatever level of expertise they have. So I'm really glad you're here too. So thank you, Margaret. It's 9:30, and the next item on our agenda, other than, and we have a number of things, but one of the issues is, do we do an executive session? The executive session, as it is established, having to do with strategy and negotiations and pending claims of litigation, is primarily updates on things that are going on. There isn't anything that requires an immediate decision. So I think maybe we will skip the executive session unless somebody has a significant objection to that. Mr. Aylesworth, what do you think?
Well, I know it looks like Mr. Kotchenberger had a comment. I, would echo, some of what you just said, that while what we're looking to discuss in executive session in terms of, pending and or potential on the horizon legal activity or litigation is important. There's no decision points that need to be reached tonight, so I don't think it's urgent in that sense. So it registers high on importance, but not high on urgency. But I don't know. It looked like Mr. Kotchenberger had a comment.
Thanks, John. I was just going to say, Kevin's here, and he's been here all night, and I think it's some value. There's a real value to everything to move ahead with this tonight. It's not. Whatever the council decides, of course. But I would vote to continue since Kevin's here. He's prepared, and we might as well go to it.
Mr. Dean, what's your feeling about this? You certainly have stuck with us this far.
Well, one of the advantages of this remote is when I'm here at my dining room table. So but I'm perfectly willing at another time, whatever is the council's preference is fine.
Mr. Freudman?
I would just as soon us go into executive session. It doesn't have to be long. I'd just like to know, what the topic is, what is it about, rather than us finding out about it later, kind of almost after the fact. Just curious, we should be in the loop. That's the purpose of the executive meetings when we have them, is to kind of keep us in the loop of what's going on.
Exactly. Mr. Bruder?
I'm okay. I was just going to say, if others were inclined to move it, I agree with Councilor Freudman's assessment now that he has said that. But I've been in meetings since 4 with the Mansfield Downtown Partnership. So if we could wait, that'd be great. But if I also see the benefits of not, I don't want to be surprised either.
Okay, and then let's end this discussion. We will go into executive session, but let's try to keep our remarks between now and then as brief as possible. Is there any reports of council committees, personnel?
Thank you, Mayor. The Personnel Committee met just prior to this meeting. We have one thing of significance that will need a vote. I guess what I'll do is I'm just going to read the motion, and it won't need to be seconded, and then I'll speak to it. The Personnel Committee recommends to the Town Council the hiring of a consulting group for the purpose of designing a 6-month review mechanism for the town manager, conducting an evaluation survey, and presenting a report with the data to the Personnel Committee.
Just a point of order, Mayor. Are we able to hear a motion from the Personnel Committee without it being on our agenda? Sorry, I turned my camera off.
We've done it before. We've
I guess
heard
any motion is in order. I withdraw my point of order. I apologize.
Okay, Ms. Bertholt, would you speak to your motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. After much discussion on this issue and an excellent report by Holly, she made this recommendation. It will cost only about $3,000, and it can be done quickly. The thinking is that the town manager's position is extremely important, that we want to get this right, that there's a level of expertise that we as the Personnel Committee and the Town Council really don't bring to the process. There was concern on the committee to make sure that we're not handing it over entirely, that we'll actually be reviewing the raw data that comes in and ultimately be making the final report to the Town Council, but that this process would be greatly helpful for everybody and also for the town as a whole to make sure that Mr. Aylesworth has a real firm landing here.
Anybody else wish to speak to this motion? Mr. Freudman.
I'm kind of torn. I don't know that I can support it. On the other hand, I don't know that I can oppose it. So maybe I'll abstain. The thing is, you know, we have so much expertise here, not just our human resources director, but, you know, all the directors that have designed a process, if you want to use that phrase, on how to evaluate the employees in their department. I don't know that this is rocket science, that we have to hire a consultant to help us with the process for coming up with proper parameters for evaluating somebody's job. So I don't know that we need a consultant for this. I'm not saying that I would want to come up with a process. I'm not qualified, but we have plenty of qualified people who do that all the time. It's part of their jobs, is evaluating other employees. And we have as I said, we have a human resources director, as well as directors who do that all the time with their employees. So I don't know that I'll support this motion. I probably will abstain or oppose it.
Ms. Bertholt, followed by Mr. Shern.
And I appreciate Mr. Freudman's concerns. I just share what one of the things I spoke about at our committee meeting, and that was that failing at the process with our last town manager, I learned a great deal of humility and respect for those who have more expertise than I do. And I feel like we really need to get this right. I thought this was an excellent suggestion. Moreover, of interest was that Holly found an old memo from our former town manager, Matt Hart, specifically saying that hiring a consultant to do this work would be helpful to the process.
Mr. Shern.
It's been said. I'll pass.
I would also like to comment that one of the real issues here is that there's nobody in town hall who isn't evaluated by Mr. Aylesworth or isn't supervised by Mr. Aylesworth. So there's a real problem in asking people to develop measures to evaluate their own supervisor. So the idea of getting an independent third party both produces more confidence in the process from all parties, all sides, and it also reaffirms our the independence of the evaluation. So it is fact and evidence based rather than influenced in any way by any sense of favoritism or preference. Are we ready to vote on this motion? Is there anybody who wishes to abstain from this motion? Mr. Freudman wishes to abstain. Is there anybody who wishes to vote in the negative? All right, I will rule that the motion has been adopted by a vote of 7 positive, 1 abstention. All right, anything else from personnel?
Nothing else to report. Thank you.
Finance?
We've not met since the last town council meeting.
Committee on committees?
We have not met. And as for the ad hoc committee, we did meet last week on affordable housing. Our next meeting is May 12th, where we will be reviewing ideas for generating money to put into the housing fund, and then generating ideas on prioritizing and how to spend that. So we're working to have another survey, and the survey results from the most recent fact finding has been posted on our town website.
Okay, thank you. Anything on departmental and advisory committee reports? Anything on petitions, requests, and communications? Then anything for future agendas? All right, then we need a motion to go into executive session. Mr. Shaken?
I move that we enter into executive session to discuss strategy and negotiations with respect to pending claims or litigation, and that we invite to that executive session Ryan and Kevin. And anyone else? Ryan and Kevin.
Mr. Osberger seconds. Ryan, do we need anybody else besides you and Kevin?
Not for the purposes of this discussion, no.
Okay. Then all those is anybody opposed to going into executive session? I rule that we have voted unanimously to go into executive session. So turn off the recording. Goodbye, Tasha. We'll tell you what time we adjourn.
Are we streaming still though?
No.
Recording is off.
We need to make sure we're not. Recording's off.
Yeah, that's different than streaming now.
Yeah. Is anybody there from IT to confirm the status of the streaming? May need to have somebody try to tune in via the live stream and see.
I'm trying now.
Okay. Recording is off.
Nope, we're definitely still streaming.
Recording is off.
We need to make sure we're not. Recording's off.
Yeah, that's different than streaming now.
Okay, so I'm going to reach out to Jamie. I don't know who's running things on IT tonight, so I will check with Jamie. 1 second.
I think once that IT spot goes away, then it's no longer streaming.
All right, while we're waiting for that to happen, I just want to remind everybody that what happens in executive session is extremely confidential and not to be repeated. You know, this is a town where rumors can spread really quickly, so it's very important for this kind of issue that we keep these confidences.